You travel about the world, but I must say, stay with my family in one place, a limited horizon. You speak of a global vision. Now, how am I to have this? You travel about a great deal in the world, but I must stay with my family in one place and live in a limited horizon. You speak of a global vision. How am I to have this? I'm sorry, I've never talked about global vision. The speaker doesn't indulge in visions or in imagination or in fanciful romantic nonsense. He was saying, you cannot have peace in the world, physical world, if you have no global relationship, not vision, something fanciful, utopia, some ideal which is non-fact. The fact is that we are divided as nationalities, religious, sectarian, little groups, smaller groups, divided. And there's this question of war, which is being heightened, threatened. And a man wants to understand the nature of peace, which is very complex outwardly. There must be a global relationship, which means no nationalities, no religious divisions, neither the Catholic, Protestant, Hindu, Buddhist, and all that business. He's not talking about visions at all. This is practical, the other is impractical. To kill each other by the million through atom bombs and so on is most impractical. But apparently our minds are so conditioned that we stick to the impractical. The questioner asks, you travel about a great deal, but I must stay with my family in one place, and so my horizon is limited. You speak about global vision, which I answered. How am I to have this? Do you mean to say your house, your family, prevents you from having a global outlook on the world? Right? I'm asking this question, if I may. One may live in a small village, work endlessly, or live someplace where your neurotic attitudes and all that can have full play. But while you are living in a small village, you mean to say you can't have a global attitude, a holistic approach to life? I'm asking this question most respectfully. Does one have to travel all over the world to have global attitude? Most of you have traveled probably all over the world tourists do all, and wherever the tourists go, they destroy that place. There used to be lovely villages and towns, not these enormous hotels and so on, before the tourists came. And when the tourists come, you know what happens. Food becomes more expensive. Tourists are cheated. You know all that. That's your fact. So, what is it to have an outlook, a feeling rather, of humanity? What does it mean to have a feeling that the whole world, human world, is you? The human world has great troubles, great anxieties and miseries and confusions, and beastly neurotic activities. And one realizes that what you are is the rest of humanity. That's a fact, if you go into it simply, not theoretically, not in abstraction intellectually, but even if you do go into it intellectually, it's a fact that our brains are not individual brains. They have been evolving through thousands of years. And when you observe from one's little village and walk, one can observe what is happening in the world: wars, 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 hatreds, man against man. The eternal quarrel between people. One blaming the other, and taking them to court or divorce or this or that. All this can be settled if you are somewhat yielding, intelligent. But we are not. And what we are is very, very, very limited. And you cannot ask, how am I to break through this limitation? To have feeling of that you are the entire humanity. There is no how. That's one of our most impractical questions. There is a how when you want to drive a car. There is a how when you want to learn mathematics or a new language and so on. But psychologically, there is no how. If you have a how, it means a system, a method. And when you practice a system, a method, you're back again the same old limited, narrow, dull mind. So it's not a question of how to get out of this limited way of life, to understand the global, holistic way of perception, but to observe the limitation, one's own limitation, one's own narrow, ugly prejudices, conclusions about another, or one's own conclusions and sticking to it. The very word conclusion means the ending. We have concluded a peace. We have concluded a war. So there is no conclusion, but inquiry, probing, questioning, doubting. And when the walls which we build around ourselves, that is the real problem. The religious walls, the personal walls, the neurotic walls, that's the problem. To be aware of all this, to observe without motive. And that's very difficult for a neurotic person, for a person who is concluded that he is this, he is that, or other person is that or that. Global relationship alone can solve our human problems as war, poverty, and to be aware of one's own limitation.